Hey guys, checking out a really exciting bike today. We're at Outdoor Demo Day in, I guess, Bootleg Canyon near Las Vegas for Interbike, and we're getting a first look at the Focus JAM². So the JAM² is the full suspension version of their new design that's using the E8000 mid-drive and their internally sort of packaged battery. It is replaceable. You can slide it out through the bottom bracket area, but you have to take the motor off. It's a bit of a hassle. So for all intents and purposes, it's kind of built in. I've also reviewed the Bold Squared, and this is more of it's kind of a cross-country bike. You'll notice that it's a hardtail, 120 millimeters of travel on that suspension versus 140. So we've got air suspension fork, RockShox Yari, with compression adjust clicker that goes to full lockout. We've also got rapid recovery rebound there at the lower right. And then we've got an RT from RockShox, and this looks like the Deluxe. Okay, so that's also air. We've got the same adjusters, and they were talking about how this setup back here is designed to be, I guess, a good climber. You're not going to get quite as much bob, and I don't remember the exact terminology they were using, but there's a bit of a. Chris, do you remember they were telling us about the suspension before, and it was a new design for me.
Yeah, so it's Focus specific design called Fold, and
Fold. There we go.
Yeah, and basically part of it is that 30% you'll get. It's kind of there's different levels to the suspension where it'll do 30% will compress for the small bumps, and then the other 70% it's a little bit stiffer for the larger bumps. So yeah, it does give that ability so you're not bobbing as much when you're climbing.
It's neat to see. You know, the other day I was speaking with Mike Kluga, is like the founder of Focus. He was talking about how he used to do just trail riding and compete in kind of a cyclocross events, and now mountain bikes is really seems to be the focus of their electric bike line. Going into 2018, you know, these are two of their really big, exciting bikes. And to see a brand new suspension design, a rear suspension design, to me, that's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not easy, and especially there's a lot of patents on different suspension designs.
Right,
so,
like the Horse Link, that
right?
expired a while ago, and it's like, okay, so the Specialized used to be Horse Link, and now you see it on other. And anyway, there's some pros and cons to that. It might be a test ride kind of a thing to feel it out yourself, but it's been feeling pretty good to me, and I appreciate the attention to detail they put into this. Really, the whole bike is fascinating to me. So not only do you have this cool rear suspension setup, but you also have that built-in battery that just looks beautiful. And I think it only weighs like 4.7 pounds. We had one outside of the bike earlier, and I was looking at it and measuring it. There are these bolts that go right through the battery pack to keep it from rattling around. And they also mount that slide clip, which we'll talk about later. It's very cool. And then the E8000 motor from Shimano, probably see this on some other bikes, but one of the benefits is the Q factor is 175 millimeters, so it's a lot narrower, or rather standard. You don't have crank arms and pedals that are pushed out so wide like you do on some other systems. So that's a big benefit. You'll notice this is a narrow, wide tooth chainring. We've got an 11-speed cassette in the rear with Shimano Di2 XT with the Shadow Plus lever here, so that's for loosening or tightening the clutch. It's going to help to reduce some of that chain slap and bounce. Really nice built-in rubber slap guard. I think the teeth on this chainring, we were looking before, it's like 11 to 46. This one has 48. Part of the reason I'm going back and forth on these specs is because we're looking at a demo bike from Europe.
Right. And this one will be slightly different in the US, but most of the technical specs are the same. One of the big differences, the color is different. It's more of a matte green color. They will have a lower spec bike with actually a very similar colorway as well, though.
So coming back to what this is, the Focus JAM² Plus, because it has plus size tires. Those are 27.5 by 2.8, a little bit fatter. They're going to give you good traction, a little bit of cushion. It's sort of the new popular thing for electric mountain bikes in particular, right? Because you get a little bit of slowdown or friction because of the bigger tires, but it's like, whatever, it's an electric bike. I'd rather have some comfort. It's a bit heavier, and I don't want to deflect on rocks. I want to just ride over stuff. So the plus size is popular, but this also comes in a 29er, and then there's some different SKU levels. So are you getting the Pro, which has the electronic shifting that we see here, Di2, or what was the other one? It's like the
LTD or limited
yeah,
version, which has the standard mechanical shifting, and some slightly different specs on brakes and suspension as well.
Right. I think we're going to see more from these guys on these bikes too. It really feels like they're working from a platform, and then they're saying, well, do you want 29er wheels, or do you want the 27.5 plus size? Do you want electronic shifting, or are you okay with mechanical shifting? And the price reflects that. And it was really interesting to see, we were talking about the Bold Squared before. This one's not a Pro or anything, and it's like $48.99.
$48.99, and then this one's $59.99, and the lower spec will be a little bit less as well, and there's kind of some range there between the two.
Yeah, so there's a lot of choice. I mean, it's like, well, do you care about full suspension? Maybe you're just barely stepping up price-wise. You can step up and spend several $100 to get the full suspension version, or several hundred more and you get the, well, I guess it's almost it's $1,000 more to get the electronic shifting. So one of the things that's really interesting when we talk about electronic shifting is that it's all part of the same system here. So we have Shimano electronic shifting Di2. We have Shimano power level, on assist. There are 3 levels of assist. We also have the Shimano drivetrain, which is hypothetically it's controlling both. So you're shifting as well as your power. I know people who have had mid-drive powered mountain bikes, and they've gone through chains, they've gone through sprockets, derailleurs. This is Chris Nolte. He runs Propel Bikes in Brooklyn, New York, and you sell, at this point, predominantly Bosch. I mean, are people coming in needing to replace some of that hardware?
Yeah, because one of the challenges is that on higher-end mountain bike stuff, and which you often find on a lot of electric bikes, a lot of the components are made to be very lightweight and sometimes not as durable. Sometimes we're finding bikes, they spec them with parts which might traditionally be considered lower spec, or like Sunrace, for example, they make steel cassettes, which can oftentimes be a lot more durable.
Yeah.
But that's one of the big challenges with electric bikes, electric mountain bikes, is that the rear cassette, all the wearable parts can wear out, specifically with center drive motors. There
is added force. So let's talk about that force. The Shimano E8000 motor, this is next up. It's supposed to be a mountain bike specific motor versus their E6000. We saw that on like the Wallerang and some of the other, I think there's the Raleigh Maseo IE. There were several bikes that had that. And it was compact, it was lightweight, efficient, not as powerful though. So for this to be mountain bike specific, it's 250 watt to 500 watt peak output with up to 70 newton meters of torque. So that's great. And then coming back to the communication of Di2 and the motor, reducing some of that mashing, I think that's pretty phenomenal. I love how small, compact it is. It has this replaceable plastic skid plate along the bottom, the Q factor, the standard chain ring. So this is 34 tooth chain ring up front. It's nice. This is more like a regular bike. And I think even the spindle, it's positioned further back, so you don't end up with this longer chain stay where you have a longer bike that isn't going to be as nimble or snappy. Is that what what's your experience been with so far, Chris?
Yeah, that is one of the main benefits, and you see that with some of the other systems where they kind of tilt them up and that sort of stuff, where Shimano kind of built the system by default to allow for that shorter chain stay, and this bike actually has one of the shortest out of all the ranges out there. So
that's awesome. And it does come in, I think this one's like 4 or 5 sizes.
That's right, yeah. So they go 41, 44, 47, and 50 centimeter.
Sweet. And what are we looking at here? Is it the 44?
Yeah, this is the medium size of 44 centimeter.
So yeah, just so you guys know, measure the length, the width, the standover height, the seat tube, all for this specific bike. Got that back at the website for you. And again, coming back to just this airflow technology is kind of neat. The design of the frame is a standout for me. So we're going to see more Shimano powered electric bikes. That's great. But this has a really unique battery design. It's 378 watt hours, which is 36 volts, 10.5 amp hours. It's a little bit smaller than the Bosch PowerPack 400. That's like several years old now.
Right.
That's 36 volt, 11 amp hours. So this one's 10.5. It's like, why go smaller? Well, it only weighs 4.7 pounds. And so this bike overall is like 46.3 pounds. That's a lightweight bike, full suspension.
Absolutely, yeah, and that's really the concept for Focus. It's making a lightweight electric mountain bike with very little resistance on the motor system when you're pedaling without power, and it's just the idea is to kind of be an extension of a traditional mountain bike experience. And this is something particularly unique because Focus was one of the only brands right now to have their own proprietary battery integrated in the frame. Shimano does make some batteries available, but Focus wanted to kind of push the envelope with their design, and they end up coming up with this concept, which I think is great.
It's sweet. And then this is an aluminum alloy frame. In the future, we might see some other materials. Coming back to those different specs of, okay, do you use a 29er, 27.5? Is it electronic shifting or not? It's really cool. We got the seat post dropper, 150 millimeters of travel, 31.6 millimeter seat post diameter. If you wanted to swap that out, you'd have to, rerun the cabling and stuff. I already talked about the suspension being 140 millimeters of travel, air on both. Very nice, relatively lightweight. Boost, so we have slightly longer hub in the front, and that gives you a better bracing angle of those spokes, and then a 15 millimeter through axle, Maxwell style, that actually threads into the left slider there. And then we've got a 148 boost in the rear with 12 millimeter, and this has, I think it's just a 6 millimeter hex wrench. So there's no quick release on the rear. You've got to do some trail maintenance or something. You make sure you have that extra tool. We talked about the tires a little bit. These are the Maxxis Recon Plus. To me, I don't know. I'm used to seeing Schwabe on a lot of road bikes and stuff. Do you have any feedback on Maxxis, or do you think these would be tubeless ready?
Yeah, it is set up to be tubeless ready. Maxxis has been really picking up a lot of steam in the mountain bike space specifically, and I think we're going to see a lot of e-mountain bikes spec'd with these tires going forward.
And we were also looking at these DT Swiss wheel set here. Seems lightweight, 15 gauge spoke, so a little bit lighter gauge, maybe some more flex. 36 of those, so it's a well-built wheel with a nicer hub. I can't say for sure if that's what's going to come with the US version.
Yeah, on the Pro version it does, and they're also straight pull spokes, so they don't have the bend at the other end, which you would not quite commonly find on other bikes. So it enables the spoke to be a lot stronger in that position.
Straight pull, yeah. Were the other ones called tapered, or what are they?
Well, tapered would be kind of, having the thinner center and then larger at the ends, which sometimes, some of the brands do that to, save weight and kind of change some of the dynamics of the wheel.
Okay, well, I appreciate the feedback. Sounds like these are designed to be stronger. So my comment earlier, it's like 15 gauge spoke. A lot of times I'm saying that for some of the cheaper bikes where I'm like 12 gauge spokes, but then they can kind of vibrate loose and you have to tighten the nipples more frequently. Or even I've heard people say they use Loctite sometimes to keep their spokes from coming undone.
Right, and traditionally you'll find a lot of the heavier gauge spokes on hub motor bikes. And it's not always the case that you have a heavier gauge that is going to be better. A lot of times it's the quality of metal, and it's also just how the wheel is built and the rim. It has a lot to do with it as well.
Yeah, so coming back to, you see DT Swiss, it's like a pretty good brand. Tapered head tube, it's a little bit more robust. Maybe they can have like a shorter head tube on some of these mountain bikes. They're trying to keep this as straight as possible. That's another thing. It does bulge out, but a lot of the electric bikes, they kind of bring it back further, and having straight, it gives you some stiffness and better power transfer. I noticed that the crank arms on this one were like 170 because we're on a medium, but if you get a larger size, you're gonna get 175. There's the dropper seat post. Here we've got the 2-finger. These are the hydraulic disc brakes, so 180 millimeter in the rear, 203 up front, so excellent, really big. These look like pretty nice rotors too. I don't know if this is the TEC. Is that a Shimano thing, TEC?
Yes.
Yeah, so these just say Dior XT, but in any case, offering good stopping power, just a couple fingers, and these ones have the finger adjust reach, so you can bring them in a little bit if you want to. If you're wearing gloves or you just have smaller hands and you're on one of those smaller frame sizes. So cockpit is really clean, and it's nice to just have one display here versus a display plus extra button pads floating around, or a big, the Bosch Intuvia. It's relatively large and it swivels and it's removable, and it has micro USB charging, but it stands out a little bit more, and if you crash, it could get damaged easier. This does not swivel, so hopefully it doesn't glare in your face. You don't get that reflection going on. There's a little button on the bottom to interact with it, and depending on if you're wearing gloves and stuff, it's a little small. It takes a little bit of finessing.
Yeah.
Is probably the right word. And then we've got these triggers over here. They give you that nice click, but there's no, it's just like an electronic signal. So it's sort of there's this really cool word for things that, like, it's some fancy word, like when you're on your phone and it looks like a clock because that's what you're used to, so it's mirroring real world things. That's what's going on here. There's this, I wish I could remember the word. And then we've got the triggers over here too, and they're electronic too. So all this is electronic. It's just really interesting how that's set up. If we power on the pack now, Hold that for a couple seconds and you get this nice blue glow happening. And then the display comes to life. It says Shimano Steps. I'm gonna go to the other side to block the sun. So we've got our battery indicator, 5 dots, which, you know, I'd prefer 10 or maybe a battery percentage, but you know, you get the idea. There is a range estimate, so that's great. That's much more useful than the battery indicator in my opinion. Speed, it's set to miles per hour right now, which is great. And then assist level, right now it's off, but if we click up, I'm gonna use the little button to do that. It goes to Eco, Trail, and Boost. And Trail and Boost can be modified, so you can actually change like how much power is being delivered by using the app, and that's the E2 app. We got it on the phone. It's kind of the same app for...
Yeah, so it'll work with any Shimano system, you know, whether it's just the Di2 or if you're using it for the motor system.
Yeah, that app, you as Chris was saying, you can use it for the Di2 as well as this new drive system, the E8000. It's kind of neat. If I'm gonna go ahead and push this bottom button down here, that circle I was talking about, and we go from speed to distance, odometer, range, that's the one I was talking about, it's dynamic. So if I click down to trail, it says 31 miles, Eco 41 miles. In my experience, Eco is very light, like it just kind of takes off the edge of the weight of this bike. It is still heavier, even though it's a lighter electric bike. So yeah, anyway, nice to have range on the fly, but if you leave it for a few you know, a minute or two, it kind of switches back to speed. What are the two that persist?
Right, so cadence, it will stay on if you wanted to really keep an eye on your cadence, or if you use any of the odometer or the range or anything like that, it will by default switch back to the speed after.
Right. So there's timer, there's the average speed, got max speed, and then there's the cadence. That's the one Chris was talking about. So later when we ride, you know, I'm always thinking about cadence. Some of the older Yamaha systems, I'm not sure about the Shimano, but it would peak out at like 100 RPM, and I prefer to spin a little faster. So, you know, this seems to fit that, at least 120.
It's optimal for creating more power and just being more efficient in general to spin at a higher RPM.
For sure. So if we hold that circle button, we're gonna get into those settings. There's a lot of great options. Shimano's always done a good job with their display options, in my opinion. You just use those triggers to go through. So we can clear the trip meter, clock, Bluetooth LE, that's the app, Bluetooth Ant, so that's like if you have a heart rate monitor or something. Lights, you can wire in some lights, it sounds like. That's what we were talking about?
Right, so most commonly found on the, you know, street bikes and that sort of thing, but it is nice to have that option if, you know, some people might want to make it into a multi-use bike to add lights on, or maybe, you know, some people, it's common at least in the Northeast, that in the winter time they might want to ride and it's a little darker, you want to have lights on your mountain bike.
Yeah, we were discussing that earlier with the Bold Squared. Being a hardtail, you could put a rack on it and you could turn it into a fun commuter. Still neat to see that it's the same system and you have that option if you're willing to work with the shop and get some help. And then brightness on the display. Whoa, oh, I'm in brightness. Okay, I want to get out of this. There we go. Down to beep. You can turn off the beep, which is awesome. Units, language, adjust, RD, protection reset. Do you want to talk about these? Because these are kind of fancy.
Yeah, so the adjustment basically on this system, because it's Di2, you can adjust how fast it shifts, and it's based on, you know, how many microseconds you can adjust that. Sweet. And I believe that the RD protection is actually if it was dropped or something like that, and you can reset it to recalibrate the derailleur. Yeah, and there's a little bit more settings available through the app, but you know there are some options here. Yeah,
sorry we don't have the app live. You know, some ways the glare and some of the issues we were having earlier. Wanted to keep this simple and relatively straightforward with just the bike. And it seems like you can do most of the adjustments you need with the bike as long as you're willing to take their standard, you know, trail and boost modes.
Right.
I found myself riding in boost a lot just for fun.
We're e-bike guys. I mean, what do you expect?
Right. It's great fun out here. These mountains, you just climb right up. So that's kind of it. You know, I hope this has been useful. There's a lot of details. There's the handlebars here. These are using ergon locking grips. We already talked about the tires, the plus size, the airflow and stuff. But, you know, Chris, the whole point here was like, hey, let's make our own battery. Let's make it lighter. Let's give people options. So what's the option?
All right, so this is the TEC, or Tailored Energy Concept. This is designed specifically by Focus, and it enables you to add to basically double the range. So you start out with 378 watt hours that's on the bike. This is an additional 378 watt hours.
Can I try this?
Yeah.
So this is 4.9 pounds, so it's only 0.2 pounds heavier than the tube battery that's already in there. And I mean, it's pretty cool. It has like a little LED power indicator on the outside right there. So this one's only like 50%. Got some rubberized edging going on. And then there's this little, I think it's the energy bus magnetic charging port on top. Just to give you some idea of what this looks like. You know, it's cute. There's no real handle on it, but it's small and light enough that you can grip it from the sides. And then you just seat it on the track like that and slide it down, and it clicks in. It's a little bit of, it feels very solid, the mounts, because they go all the way through those bolts. There's a tiny bit of rattling, but these bikes they're demo bikes. They've been falling over a little bit. And then I wanted to show you the same magnetic charging port on the bottom of the top tube. And then there's this little port back here. So it's like, yeah, go ahead with Chris. So this dongle has a nice little storage space right here. And then the wire kind of sits into this channel on the bottom of that top tube. You get this dongle when you buy the TEC Pack. And the idea is that you just be riding around like this using primarily that first battery pack. And then if you start to run low on that and you need more juice, well, you just take this cable and then you plug it in like that. And now you're completely tapped into this second pack. So it's a novel design, and you could store that in a backpack or a rack or something else, or you could leave that somewhere and then just carry it back on the bike. The thing is, it's one or the other. You're either using the integrated pack or the TEC Pack. It doesn't balance them the way that Bosch does on their dual battery systems. And we were talking about that. It's like, maybe that's not a bad thing, because if one system fails and you only have one thing to diagnose, maybe the system's less complex.
And I guess the idea, it could be kind of interesting, is if you had multiple TEC Packs and you say, okay, I want to carry multiple and I want the bike to always be the reserve, so you're always running off the TEC Pack, and then just at the end you kind of use the reserve inside the bike. It might change some of the the cycles of the batteries.
That's true.
It might not all be balanced, but it's an interesting concept, and I think that there are benefits to each system.
It seems like Focus offers 2-year comprehensive warranty, so they're one of the more legit, like, bigger companies, especially in Europe.
Sure.
They have a lot more options of bikes there, so it's nice here in America to finally see them coming our way. And just the battery design, I do want to call out that, especially out here, we've been laying the batteries down in that charging cord. Even the charger. Did we already look at this? This is the charger itself. It's 2 pounds. And, it has a removable cord wall side, which is nice. And then this is the energy bus charging port, and it just hit the dirt. And some of that dirt's sticking just because it's, dirt, but some of it's actually iron filings. So this is magnetic, and if you leave it in your shop and stuff, it can start to get a little dirty just because it is magnetic. The energy bus standard is really cool because it sends power as well as data. So that's what they could use to update your bike at some point, is a similar standard. This is a European charger. It's 4 amps versus just 2, which is great. So it's going to charge the battery a little bit faster. We were estimating that because these packs are only 378 watt hours, it would only take like 3.5 hours to charge them.
Right about that, yeah.
You should get like 20 to maybe 50 miles per charge, depending on the level of assist. It's great that, again, the bike's so light and relatively efficient. As you shift gears, of course, you're going to be empowering that motor. So this is a little bit more like a manual type of transmission versus a hub motor, but it keeps all of that weight, especially on a full suspension bike. It's unsprung, or it's sprung. Is it sprung weight? Yeah, there's no unsprung weight. Yeah, this is sprung. Like, it benefits from the suspension versus like a hub motor powered bicycle. Then that extra weight's it's impacting your suspension performance. So they're doing it right, and I feel like that weight's low, it's center. Unfortunately, this takes up the space for where you could otherwise put a bottle cage. Maybe you can help me slide this off, Chris? There we go, you got it? Look at this. This is so cool. So if you're not using a TEC Pack, you've got this plastic, you know, it basically has bosses on it, so you can put whatever you want on it, but it does have a water bottle cage by default. And as someone who drinks water, I'm a big fan of that. Did we get it? Yeah, slide it down, click. Oh, beautiful. Look at that. That is so sweet. We're getting into the days where like the electric bikes start to really look like regular bikes.
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
the big takeaway.
Yeah, and you know, you can add tools to it, a pump, all that sort of stuff. There's, you know, really nice mounting to that system, which is cool.
We've been talking about this for what seems like forever. There's just so much to say. Did we miss anything? I mean, it's exciting because it's new.
I think that's about it. I think the physique saddle, I'm not sure if we mentioned that, but you know, but it's standard mounting, so you can do all sorts of different saddles if you wanted to.
Sweet. Oh, we got a guy with a skeleton backpack and a loft suspension, wishing he had an electric motor right now, probably. Awesome. Welcome to Interbike, guys.
Keep it interesting.
It's cool to see this stuff and talk about it, but let's actually get out there and ride it and let you see the motor. In my experience, this motor, there's, even though it relies supposedly on rear wheel speed, pedal cadence, and pedal torque, there's definitely like this torque moment where you almost have to push just a little extra to get that motor to start. And to me, it almost feels like a physical, like chink, like you're shifting into like drive or something. It seems about similar in terms of noise to Bosch and Yamaha, but probably a little louder than the Broza motor system. What do you think?
Yeah, I'd say that's about right. I mean, the Broza system uses a belt inside, which there's some concern about like servicing that, but yeah, it does have a geared system inside, so there is a little bit of noise there.
A bit of noise. It seems very responsive. Again, the shifting is pretty smooth, but it's hard to, we're gonna get out there, hopefully you'll be able to see it, but for me, there's more of like an engage moment on this versus like with the Bosch system, it feels like a smoother transition from start to stop. Yeah, and I actually, in trail mode, or what was it, boost mode? What's the high mode?
Yeah, boost mode.
Boost. I could wheelie this bike, so it was like EMTB mode in that sense. We'll get out there. Hopefully you'll get to see it, but also check it out at one of your dealers. You know, give this thing a test ride when it finally arrives in stores. Hey, so Chris and I are riding out on this, just a dirt road, getting an idea for how these bikes respond. We pedaled a lot of this way unpowered just to see what that was like. And you know, how did it feel to you, Chris?
You know, it's a pretty good incline up here, and we were climbing pretty good. But yeah, I really didn't feel too much limitation, you know, compared to a non-electric bike. You do have, you know, a little bit more weight on a bike like this, but really it was not bad.
Then we switched to Eco, which before I was complaining about. I was like, it's hardly feel it. And when you've been climbing without power, you notice Eco.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, it definitely feels, I mean, I don't know what the specific percentage is, but it feels like, you know, we're probably doubling what we put into it.
Yeah, so he is on the JAM², and oh man, look at this. Got like drifter. Sweet. Oh, looks like an electric trike contraption. Awesome.
Pretty cool.
So Chris is on the JAM², and this one has the 29er wheel set. So this is what we're talking about. They have different flavors, slightly different dropper seat posts. You want to just ride with me a little ways in Eco? And
sounds good.
Cool. Okay guys, I'm trying to position you right down looking at the motor. That's the E8000. In my experience, again, it's really relying on torque a lot, and I've done some hard shifting and it doesn't seem like it's offering detection. I can definitely mash those gears, so what I've been doing is easing off a little bit when I switch gears, and that way the motor knows to back off because the torque signal is reduced, and then the chain's able to transition more smoothly versus mashing. So anyway, you are going to hear, you know, I'm going to ride in the highest mode here, boost. You're going to hear the motor spinning up. I've noticed when I hit 20 miles per hour, it kind of cuts out, just and then I'm able to pedal a little faster than that, but pretty quickly, especially out here in the wind and climbing, I'm back in range and it kicks in again. So listen for all of that. And the RPM, I noticed the motor was still going at like 140 RPM before, so I feel like I haven't really reached a limit, and that's nice. I love that. I'm going to try to show all that. responsive. Starting and stopping quickly. This time I'm going to pedal gently and then try to show you that sort of catch moment that I was talking about, where it goes from no assistance to finally kicking in. Hard to explain it. It feels like literally like there's just like this extra slot that it fits into when the motor finally starts. It's felt smooth, it's good, it's responsive. There's just this little, it's kind of a click feeling instead of a smooth like it's kind of a it kind of clicks into the motor finally clicking on. Anyway, I think you have to try it. But it in practice it works well. The idea here is I'm going to be shifting pretty hard, hoping that the Di2 system, electronic shifting, is communicating with the motor and reducing some of that mashing and helping with some shift detection. I really don't think it is. I haven't noticed it. It's kind of banging a bit. Yeah, I don't know. Definitely banging a bit. It's great to use that just common sense. The same way I would ease off the pedals shifting on a regular electric bike, you want to do that here so that you aren't really mashing those gears with your own force, plus up to 70 Newton meters of motor force. Now we're going to do some riding for fun, primarily in trail and boost. Those are the most useful modes, and I haven't updated them. These are stock, so I haven't been using the app. Just ride around on the trail a little bit, test out that suspension. Works pretty well. So Chris is up there on the hardtail. We've been cruising along on, you know, some rocky terrain. These 29ers, I'm definitely feeling more of the trail than I was with the plus size tires. I'm gonna take this one back through that little section with some little jumps and mounds. I'm gonna go ahead and pass you up, Chris, and I'll meet you down at the bottom of that section. There we go. Someone else riding around on the Focus bike right there. There we go. Technical section. The bike's not overreacting. It's not like the motor's pushing me further. Woo! And I wanna, yeah. Even with 29ers, feels pretty good. That 140 millimeter suspension, softening it up. Rainbow. So Chris is going to take off back to the booth. I thought it might be interesting to cut across this rig. It's almost like a rock quarry or something, and just, you know, get some more speed riding on this. I've got the full suspension, so with the 29er tires, this one's a little bit more comfortable. We'll see you back there.
All right.
There we go. Let's see. If you can balance, these are kind of like go anywhere machines. I didn't be able to take this. Lost a little bit of traction, but we're gonna get back on and give it a try. And the heavier duty brakes. Here we go. Try round number 2. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. There's our, pretty easy to hit our 20 mile per hour. To just be able to point your bike in any direction and kind of go exploring. Take it off-road again here. Oh yeah, straight up, head on. I think we maxed the torque on that one. We're definitely on some loose terrain. Might have been spinning the tire a little bit right there. So yeah, that's the 29er versus the plus size tires again. Just walk it the rest of the way. If you're able to carry your momentum, this stuff's all possible. Kind of thing that would be really difficult to balance on and power through on a non-electric bike. And there's the wall that we came down earlier. Just, you know, having fun, pushing the bike. Feel great on this smooth pack pavement. Pardon me, man. Do you have a card?
I gave them all out.
Oh, bummer. What's your name?
Jeremy McGee. JeremyMcGee.com.
Okay, sweet. Well, guys, that was a blast. Chris, I really appreciate your help getting all those specs right. That is the Focus JAM² Plus Pro with all the fixins. Had a great time on this. Really neat to see another big competitor entering the mid-drive space with just a nicer motor. I mean, this thing looks beautiful. It works really well. For the full write-up on this with all the specs and stuff, I'll see you back at ElectricBikeReview.com. Of course, have fun out there. Ride safe.